I am here today with Cameron Whitten. And Cameron, I'm going to try to introduce you, but you do a lot of things. So I'm going to apologize in advance because I will undoubtedly miss some things, but let me give it a try, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Cameron Whitten is a community activist, small business owner, and nonprofit executive. At the age of 18, Cameron experienced homelessness in Portland, and after working his way back into housing with the support of local nonprofits, he has spent the past decade or so as a prominent community advocate and civic entrepreneur. Cameron recently served as the executive director of Q Center and is the founder of racial justice nonprofit Brown Hope. He's also the founder of the Black Resilience Fund, an emergency fund dedicated to healing and resilience by providing immediate resources to Black Portlanders. It's hard to believe that they have any spare time, but when they do, Cameron serves on the board of directors at local nonprofits such as REACH, CDC, Venture Portland, and Pioneer Courthouse Square. They cook hundreds of meals for the homeless and just generally show up to important events and meetings all around Portland on an almost daily basis. And Cameron also just ran for the Metro Council. How's that, Cameron? Did I miss anything?
I think you did a good job.
Okay. Well, thank you a lot for being here with me today. As I mentioned to you earlier, the purpose of Life of Work is to help our readers learn from talented people who are putting great work into the universe and to offer them insight into different career paths and ways of working and living. You have always been incredibly inspiring to me and many others, not just because of what you do, but how you do it. From my perspective, you always seem to show up to every interaction and situation with energy, with presence, and with joy. And you always seem to share your full self with the world. And I'm curious, where do you get that energy from and how do you keep it up?
Where do I get my energy? Where do I get my joy? I get it from you. I get it from everyone. I believe that my humanity is bound in the humanity of others. And it would be such a sad world if I saw others with pain, if I saw others with resentment. My joy comes in understanding there's so much good in others that I can enjoy myself. And that's enough to keep me happy.
That's awesome. I want to kick off this conversation by talking about the Black Resilience Fund. Can you tell me what it is and why you launched it?
Yeah, so the Black Resilience Fund, and for folks to understand, at the time of this recording, the Black Resilience Fund is 16 days old. So we're explaining something that truly is a baby movement, as I like to say. So the Black Resilience Fund is response to an emergency. We are living in a crisis that has gone on for far too long in this country. And so right now we are witnessing a long and painful month that is in the middle of a year that has challenged us all. But what we know is that during some of our hardest, most challenging moments, we can still show the best of ourselves. We can rebound, we can heal, we can be resilient. And so that was the idea of the Black Resilience Fund. We are here to acknowledge the reality of systemic racism, to acknowledge the urgency for which we must fight right now and take action on systemic change. Also acknowledging that the impacts of oppression, with every act of oppression that happens in our community, creates an injury, creates a trauma upon people, every single act. Even after the abolishment of slavery, the trauma of slavery has continued to impact Black communities for generations. And so we look at issues like police violence, which the most recent murders have happened in Atlanta, they've happened in Minnesota, they've happened in other places in this country. And yet we still see the outrage, we still see the pain happening in Oregon. That's because of trauma. That's because we have continued to see the devaluation of Black lives for generations. I was a Black Lives Matter activist when Black Lives Matter started. I was a part of a caravan when, with 12 other Black Portlanders who went down to Ferguson weeks after Mike Brown was killed. And 7 years later, we have not seen the change that needs to happen. And to be honest, when I first saw the headlines about George Floyd's murder, I braced myself. I knew that we would see protests, we would see the hashtags, people putting Black Lives Matter signs in their yards, but this wasn't the first time that we heard "I can't breathe." This isn't the first time that we saw a man with his final minutes of life dying in agony on the ground. Just weeks before George Floyd, we had Ahmaud Arbery. Just days before, we had Breonna Taylor. And so when I first read about George Floyd, I had no assurance at all that this was going to be different. But something has changed. There's a paradigm shift happening in this country, and I do believe it is the burden for white Americans to help to understand why things are different now. I am glad that things are different because it's creating space for us to actually do something different so that we stop ignoring the senseless suffering of our neighbors and that we truly have healing in our community. And so the Black Resilience Fund was formed as a way to show what healing looks like during a time where people have the right to be angry at the world. We have heard things from people we've directly helped through the fund who have said things like, holding that check in my hand was when I finally felt I could come up for air. And I find it to be absolutely fascinating to be living in the middle of the I can't breathe era and to hear from people who we've directly helped say things like that. I find it to be incredibly powerful. And it speaks to what we must do to be able to foster the healing and resilience that our entire community needs. This isn't just about, I got someone knocking on my door.
No problem. You can, I can pause. Yeah.
Hello. Hi, Lexi. Thank you so much.
Welcome, you got quite the load here.
Yes, welcome to my life. Sweet.
The responsibilities.
Yes. Thank you.
So welcome. It was really fun, actually. It's like a little camp.
Aha, you made it. Nice mask.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for volunteering.
Yeah, thank you for your organization. It was beautiful, and I'm so grateful to be a part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's stay resilient.
Okay, yes.
Be in touch.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.
All right. I'm back.
There's some volunteers at your door.
Yes, that's a normal occasion. Probably won't be the last today. It's not the last day, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, my house has become a command center. It's kind of ridiculous. So what I was saying was we need healing for our entire community. This isn't just about, let me start that again. You're not recording yet. So, all right, now I'm ready. It's about healing our entire community. For our Black community, for the broken Black bodies and the broken Black futures, we need healing so that we actually not just survive, but we actually thrive in this community. But also for white Americans. I think a lot about what it must be like to have lived with so much privilege to either not be aware, to ignore, or not care about the suffering of others, to see others and to be able to dehumanize them enough that you are not aware, that you don't care, or you ignore it. That is the result of a brokenness of the heart and of the soul. And that is such a tragic place to be able to ignore the suffering of another person and to see it as that's their fault or that's the way that things are meant to be. It's horrible. And so we've created an opportunity not only to provide healing for those who have experienced the brunt of oppression, but for our oppressors to finally be able to feel with their hearts and to be able to humanize members of their very own community. And it's been inspiring just to see the way that people have responded to that. We are truly sending a powerful message both to Portland, but across this world, that healing is possible, that we can create a society that we all want to be a part of, where we all are embraced and celebrated. It's not just enough to end the killings. Our communities are traumatized because this has gone on for far too long. We have to actually heal so that folks feel safe and they feel like they can thrive in this community, because that's the basic that we all deserve.
Yeah, I love that. So I think your original goal when you started this was to raise, like $10,000 or $25,000 or something, and it's
5,000.
been 5,000. Wow.
And it was a public goal, but when I first, it started off as a Facebook post, and I've done fundraising. I've been a nonprofit executive for 5 years, but naturally, I have made a lot of events that have been to fundraise to support other people's basic needs. And so that's what I wanted to do. What was really unique about this moment right before I started the Black Resilience Fund was I was getting a lot of messages from white people, who were checking in on me. And, I've been doing Black Lives Matter activism for a long time. That's never happened, not to the extent. I was getting dozens of messages from people who had never messaged me before. And at first, I started asking people, like, was there an article put out that said, check on your Black friends? I was like, did someone else post something on social media to say, check on your Black friends? And I was like, asking other Black people, like, are white people reaching out to you? It was just very interesting because it was organic. And, I knew that because of my privilege that, I'm doing better off than a lot of other Black people are. And, as much as I appreciated people checking in on me, I felt like, there are a lot of Black people who actually do need you to be taking, being supportive and checking in that don't have that right now. And so that's why I went to Facebook and I said, hey, for my Black siblings, do you need a warm meal? Do you need groceries? Do you need a bill paid? I got you. For my non-Black siblings, please reach out to me. I'll give you my cash, my Venmo, my PayPal handles, and we're gonna take care of people. And that day, I like to call it, I felt like I was like some kind of like philanthropic stockbroker, because I had a lot of friends and colleagues from the Black community who had given me different bills that they had, and I compiled that into a list. And then a bunch of white people who were messaging me, and I just sent them a paragraph. I sent them the list of people's first names and their bills so they could see where their money was going, and then they would give me money, and then I would send it back to the people for the amount that they were requesting. And I did that nonstop for 12 hours. We ended up raising $11,000 on that first day. And it was exhilarating, but I was exhausted. And I knew that this was not an efficient way to fundraise and help people. So we started that GoFundMe the next day. And I said, let's try to raise $15,000 by tomorrow. Because I thought we had hit the peak. I thought that $11,000 was the excitement and then there would be nobody left. And we ended up raising $15,000 less than an hour after me posting that GoFundMe. By the end of the day, we raised over $55,000. And then I was a fool the next day because I dared Portland to get to $100,000 and they went to $155,000. Fast forward 2 weeks later, we have raised over $500,000 through the Black Resilience Fund. And in that time, we have already given out $120,000 of that. We have built a structure of 300 volunteers who have created a process for people to apply for funds, to be interviewed, and to have people actually go out and hand deliver them checks, to go give them groceries, to go run errands for them. We've done that all in less than 3 weeks' time, and we're just getting started. Our goal right now is to raise $1 million. We are more than halfway there. And every day we are seeing new community leaders, organizations, journalists reaching out, wanting to figure out how to get our message out to the community. I am so inspired that during this time where we all have the right to be angry at the world, for us all to feel hopeless, that we actually have people reaching out showing their best selves and showing that we can be building community even at a time when it is supposed to be the hardest.
Yeah. Wow. That's inspiring. And we will definitely be linking to the Black Resilience Fund for people who want to either contribute or who feel that they want to apply for assistance. So this isn't the first time that you've actually facilitated direct cash transfers. A couple of years ago, you organized something called Reparations Power Hour, where white people were invited to contribute money that would go directly to Black, Brown, and indigenous community members who supported the Power Hour. It actually got national attention, and Tucker Carlson invited you onto a show, which is kind of hilarious. I'm curious what your thoughts are on how we should be thinking about reparations more broadly, kind of at a national or policy level.
Appreciate that, Peter. What is important to recognize, and what I think so many people across all ages, races, genders, and all backgrounds right now are seeing how broken our system is. And America as a country should not have to endure, again, the shame of a man dying, crying for his mama for 7 minutes, a knee sitting on his neck for the entire world to see. That is a level of shame that is unacceptable, and it makes us look horrible to the rest of this world. And so many of us have woken up to the realities that our system is broken, and the policies that we have tried to pass and try to implement to create equitable outcomes, whether that's, access to education, whether that's job training programs, these things are not moving fast enough. We actually have to take urgent action to address the real disparities in our society. And we have to look at it intersectionally. What I stress, very importantly, is that when George Floyd was murdered, it wasn't just a policeman seeing a Black man and there was racial profiling. The police saw a Black man and they thought he was writing a fraudulent check. They saw him, assumed that he must be poor, and he was a poor Black criminal. That is what got him killed. So as much as the racist system of policing is responsible for the death of George Floyd, it's also the system of poverty, which has been a weapon that's been killing Black communities for generations, and has been killing them at a much higher rate than policing even has. And I wonder, is it just that poverty isn't sexy enough? Is it not entertaining enough? Why are we not recognizing how dangerous that systemic poverty is destroying the lives of our neighbors? And so we need urgent action. I have supported economic development programs, I've supported educational programs, but we know if we wanted to make a difference in our lifetimes, we have to be looking at the real wealth gap in our society. Yeah. The wealth gap between whites and Blacks at this day is 3-to-1. That is the exact same amount as it was in the 1960s. Mm-hmm. And to think that we supposedly had all this progress in the last 60 years, and to see the wealth gap be at the exact same that it was, shows that we have miserably failed with our ability to imagine what justice looks like, for us to imagine how do we actually close this equity gap. And so the Black Resilience Fund, Brown Hope, the Reparations Happy Hour, all the programs that I've launched have not been shy in calling for real reparations and calling for direct cash investment into these communities, empowering them to actually make decisions on how to live their best life. Because for too long, Black communities have been preyed upon by payday loans, by check cashing services, by all of these fines and fees that poor people deal with, where they can actually be building wealth. They could be building futures for themselves and their families. And the thing that is stopping them is poverty. And an educational program, a job training program, is not going to eliminate poverty for an entire community. We have to actually provide real financial investment so that folks can start making immediate changes, so they don't have to be worrying about while they're going to school if they can pay for groceries, while they're going through a job training program, if they can pay for healthcare. give people the basic that they need, and they can then focus on how to live their best life and enjoy the things that we enjoy every single day. And so we call urgently for reparations because we know that the wealth gap in this country is because of systemic oppression, is because racially privileged people for the longest time have had access to institutions to build wealth that they did not earn. And that Black, brown, and indigenous communities had their land stolen and had their bodies and lives stolen to build this privilege that white Americans have enjoyed for so long. And so we have an opportunity to acknowledge that as fact and to acknowledge the things that we've tried to do to address the inequities, to address the unearned privilege, have actually failed. And as bold as the idea of slavery was, to dehumanize someone enough that they could become property, I believe that we need as bold of a solution like reparations to believe that direct cash investments will actually liberate people. That's what we're doing today. And as I said earlier, that man who held that $300 in his hand, it wasn't groceries on his doorstep. It wasn't a voucher to pay for his rent. It was direct cash that he held in his hand. And he said, I finally felt I can come up for air. That is magical. And that is exactly what we are advocating for to truly make justice a lived experience in this country.
Yeah, thank you. You know, we live in such a kind of divisive time, and I'm wondering if you think it's possible to change people's minds in this environment. Like, how do you think about kind of effectively reaching out to people who, you know, they may share the broader vision of racial justice or equality, but they're opposed to things like reparations, or they have a visceral negative response to phrases like defund the police or policies like that? How do you think about reaching out to those folks?
It's a good question, Peter. We as a country are not gonna go anywhere unless we really build a broad movement for change. And that's going to take us being able to let down our guard and to stop looking at it just from what I see and actually be able to listen with our ears and not just from our own perspectives. And so that is the work that we do with Brown Hope. That's the work we do with the Black Resilience Fund. We are looking to show people that addressing racial injustice, addressing oppression is not based off of white people, you're wrong, white people, you're awful, we wanna cancel you. It is actually that we all can feel joy in addressing inequities. We can all feel joy in healing this world. That is the tent that we are trying to build, a movement where we know that the work that we're doing is benefiting everyone. It's benefiting our Black, brown, and indigenous communities, but it's also benefiting those whose hearts have been broken because of their privilege. And so that is the message that we have. We have a positive message that has been sustainable, and we're gonna continue to drive that home, that we're looking for healing for all people. And I think that's what a lot of people want. They want to address the inequities of this country, while also acknowledging that many of them did not choose to be white. That's true. No one chose to be white. No, I didn't choose to be Black. I'm willing to acknowledge that, and also acknowledge that because you are white, you are in an amazing place where you have a baton that you can pass behind you and allow somebody to go the distance. I don't have that opportunity, not in the way that many white Americans do. Yeah. But I have seen people who have passed that baton. They don't have any regrets. They have seen transformation in their lives and the lives of their neighbors. So that's what I do to really convince folks who don't want to listen to the inequities of our society. I think they just need to see how much more they might like love themselves and love this world if they really did acknowledge that privilege and found ways to pay it forward.
Yeah, thank you. I want to make sure I'm cognizant of your time here. Do you have a hard stop right at 3:30?
Well, we can go on.
Okay, because I have so many questions I wrote down. We won't get to all of them, but I'm enjoying this a lot. So, what advice would you have for people who are interested in community activism, organizing, civic leadership? How should they start? What should they do tomorrow?
They should start. So, I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for protest. I first really dove into my activism in 2011. I was 20 years old, and I became involved in the Occupy Wall Street movement. At that time, I honestly didn't think I had a voice. As a young 20-year-old queer, Black, homeless youth, and it wasn't me, it was the implication by society. It was the society's message that I didn't matter, and I believed that too. I felt like, what difference could I make? And it was after attending my first protest on October 6, 2009, here in downtown Portland, surrounded by tens of thousands of people from all different walks of life, and some who looked like me, that I realized that I did have a voice. I had a story, and when I shared that voice, some people listened, and it made space for us to work together to try to make this community better. And so ever since then, I've been sharing my story, and I've been encouraging others who have been unheard to share their story. And so persistence matters so much. Believing that you can make a difference is so important. Believing you can make a difference with others is so important. And that, to me, is the most important thing. Recognizing that we're not in a moment. We're in a movement. We've been doing Black Lives Matter for 7 years. And the folks who have stayed in this work for that long are in positions where they are actually making change happen now. Imagine if we had given up 7 years ago. If we had stopped saying Black Lives Matter. Colin Kaepernick, took the knee years ago and was virtually banned from the NFL. Now we're seeing police departments completely taking the knee. We're in the middle of a paradigm shift. And this is what persistence gets us. For Black communities, we've been decrying police brutality and violence for our entire lives. The only difference now is that white Americans are finally waking up. And it's the fact that we've been speaking up for so long that we have been able to immediately see changes happening because we've been fighting for these changes for so long. It wasn't that our changes weren't viable. It was because people weren't listening. And so the fact that we did not give up made it very easy for us to find low-hanging fruit and make some changes happen. We're not done. We're just getting started. And so I encourage folks who are seeing the changes happening right now, realize what would happen if you kept going for another 7 years. That is exactly the type of energy we need to see happening in this movement right now. And I'm so grateful to our young people who are out there leading the charge. We've got groups in Portland like Rose City Justice and the Portland Civil Rights Collective. If I had seen that kind of leadership when I was a 20-year-old youth organizing, to see so many beautiful, young, Black organizers right now, if that had been around when I was organizing in 2011, I can imagine what kind of change could have happened in Portland. And so I really call on our young people who are speaking up and who are scared for their futures. They are doing the right thing. And with time, they're going to become more and more effective. And it's upon us who have been in this world for longer, who, because of our age, we've become complacent and we just accept the status quo and that this is the way things are. We need to realize that our youth are coming without a filter. They're coming with fresh eyes, and we must support them because they're reminding us of the urgency that we have to make a difference. We've seen that both with the coronavirus, and we've also seen it now with the reaction to George Floyd's murder, that we actually can take bigger systemic changes. We don't have to wait for gradual change. We can actually make big differences right now. And the only thing stopping us is ourselves.
Yeah. Persistence for sure. And big vision. So I want to kind of talk about the more personal side of Cameron a little bit. What is something that you are working on right now as a leader?
So, I'm working 95 hours a week,
Mm-hmm.
14 hours a day on the Black Resilience Fund. We are working as hard as we can to ensure that people are getting these resources immediately into their hands. And we did not expect to become $1 million initiative overnight. And so it's been amazing just to work with a huge team of volunteers who are building structures to ensure that this is as a fair, as a responsive, and as a transparent initiative as possible. And so that takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
Other than that, I serve as the executive director of Brown Hope, and we plan to continue to do this work for the long term. And the work that I describe this as is trauma-informed activism. And so we're not just about reacting to issues of racial injustice. Our work is actually working towards the vision of the community that we want to see in the long term. And so this is not just ending racial oppression, but actually creating venues for us to heal from the impacts of racism. So we just don't end these systems of oppression, but that our bodies and our lives are healed from the oppression that happened to us at any time. And so that is the work that we plan to continue to do. We will continue to do reparations power hours. We'll continue to do Black Street Bakery. We're in the process of absorbing the Black Resilience Fund so it becomes a nonprofit program. And we have a lot of other initiatives that we will be planning for the future.
Cool. So, you're working 14 hours a day. You do it all with energy. When you feel kind of unfocused or overwhelmed, what do? Do you have any routines or practices that you return to help yourself relax or chill out a little bit?
Secrets.
Yeah, I want your secrets. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not one to keep a secret, so don't tell me any secrets. I have a mantra. I have 5 words that mean the world to me. And those are, when I need them, I say them. And those words are courage, peace, hope, love, and resilience. And when I am in need, I remind myself, what we all need to remind ourselves, is that we are enough. And when I am in a place where I love myself, when I acknowledge that I am enough, I am in a place where I can heal, where I can reflect on who I am and continue to walk towards the person that I'm meant to be. And so I use these 5 words to really assess. I ask myself, in what ways do I need to be courageous today? In what ways do I need to find peace today? What do I need to be hopeful for today? And who do I need to love and why? The final one, resilience, I actually don't use because resilience has followed me my entire life. Despite being a trauma survivor, as somebody who has survived child abuse, as someone who has survived homelessness as a youth, as someone who survives racism on a daily basis, resilience has been branded into my very core. But those 5 words together are what I channel in order to continue the fight for everyone's future.
That's beautiful. I really love that. You are clearly, a very charismatic person. You also have you also have lots of experience on camera, doing interviews, public speaking.
No.
I'm curious if you have any tips for folks who kind of want to improve their public speaking or improve on camera. Just any quick tips that you think about before you engage in those venues.
Yeah, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. And so it's important to really pay attention to those who inspire you, and don't be afraid to imitate, to flatter. My favorite thing is to watch TED Talks. And I see people who have a love of language, and I allow that love to shape me, and I allow that love to shape others. And so it's all about letting the language of love spread. So learn to love language. Learn to understand what you don't love about language. Avoid that. Learn what you do love. What I would also say is keep it simple. You don't have to use the long, big words. You use the right words. And I think that's what many people don't understand. Use the right words, and you will get your point across.
Yeah. These are all great answers. This has been super fun. I just have a few more rapid fire questions, and then we'll wrap up. What are you listening to right now? Any music or podcast that you've been enjoying?
Lo-fi hip hop. It's my work music.
Okay. Is that a Spotify playlist?
I did make one, but it's not as good as there was this YouTube video that was 10 hours long. I don't know if you ever saw it, but there was this 10-hour lo-fi hip hop song that or mixtape that was on YouTube. They took it down like 2 years ago, but I finally got my hands on that. And so I can just listen to that for a whole week straight. Wow. But so you got your hands on it, but it's not on YouTube anymore. So it's like you have a private Cameron version, or can people find it? You know, basically people have downloaded the MP3 and then you can share it to other people. So I was able to get it off of the Canadian. Cool. Are there any books you've read that have really influenced your life, or that you found yourself recommending to other people a lot? Yes. So there is one book that single-handedly changed my entire life. I've actually given it out to over 100 people, and I can send you a copy if you want one. And it's called The Anatomy of Peace. And it is a book that is very important for us to be reading during this time within humanity. We are living in a time of such technology where you can send a message across the globe in a matter of milliseconds. So it's so weird to be living in a time where we technically could be closer to each other than ever, and yet we aren't. And our conflicts, our cliques are stronger than ever. The polarization within all of our communities across this world are higher than ever. And so Anatomy of Peace really is an exploration of what can we do to break down these walls of isolation. Coronavirus did not isolate us. I think coronavirus just reminded us how lonely we always have been. And so I love the teachings of the Anatomy of Peace, because it really does highlight that we all have work that we can do to be breaking down walls of isolation and humanizing others. Anatomy of Peace actually had such an impact in my life that it actually directly, that book by itself, caused me to make a bold decision to actually reconcile my relationship with my abusive father. After 13 years of silence, of not talking to him, I actually made the effort to rekindle that connection. And it was amazing that after 13 years, this was a man where up until I was 24 years old, I would wake up crying, but because I had a nightmare of him coming back into my life. And to think 13 years since I had last talked to him, to be on the phone with this man and to feel no pain, to feel no resentment. The only thing that I could think about was how I wanted to help him. It was at that moment, for a man who I could have justified for my entire life, hating him and cursing his name. The moment that I decided I wanted to help him, that I wanted to heal him, that I wanted to use that origin source of the pain from my entire life and to use that source for love, that I found myself free. I found myself liberated. I think a lot of us could benefit from taking some of our most toxic relationships and finding the hard choice to love. It will free us, and it will help us to actually create a better world. Wow. Wise words right there, for sure. That's awesome. On a less serious note, what's your favorite comfort food? Kombucha,
Okay.
that count?
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
And let's see, just a couple more. If anyone comes to mind, are there some underrated people or organizations that you think more people should follow?
Good question. Dang. Well, the answer to that is always yes. There are local organizations that I truly love. One that I would say is underrated that I really encourage folks to learn more about is Beyond Black. In Portland, the Black community has experienced generations of displacement from North and Northeast Portland, the heart of Portland's Black community, and many of whom are out in East County, East Multnomah County, Gresham, Fairview, East Portland. And there's a group out there called Beyond Black that is a CDC, a community development corporation, that is creating economic opportunities and political action for the Black community in East County. And so as much as we talk about the Black community in North and Northeast Portland, we also must acknowledge that Blackness is everywhere. And we should be looking at how to support Black people no matter where they live. And I really love that Beyond Black is doing that out in East County.
Cool. Thank you. So we will be sharing this interview with our readers actually this Friday, Juneteenth, and you're running a campaign where you're asking people to donate $19 to the Black Resilience Fund.
At minimum.
At
Don't
minimum.
let 19 be your ceiling, y'all.
Maybe 190 or 1900. And
1,000.
yeah, exactly. So we will share that with those folks. But how can people keep up with you and support your work? What's the best way if they just want to follow?
You can't keep up with me. I made a fire. You asked for that one, Peter. So follow all the handles, blackresiliencefund.com, brownhope.org. My personal handles, Instagram, Twitter, are Cameron Whitten. My Facebook is my first and last name, Cameron Whitten. I appreciate everyone who reaches out because I love meeting new people and I love finding ways for us to work together. And I appreciate you, Peter, for letting me be here for this interview.
Thank you for your words of wisdom, Cameron. This was amazing. I can't wait to share it, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.